I'm gonna get so many names wrong in this video. Next year, Capcom is set to release the newest addition to the Onimusha franchise. But recently, they've remastered Onimusha 2, and I've managed to get myself a copy of it, and I wanted to share some thoughts on it. So, in typical fashion, we're gonna spend the first 2 hours playing this game to see if it's enough for me to keep it or put it to one side for now. Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny is a game based in feudal Japan. It's part of the Onimusha franchise, but it doesn't require you to have any prior knowledge of the series to enjoy it. It's hard to pin down exactly what genre you'd put it in now, but I would kind of put it towards like the horror end of action adventure, just because we're dealing with demons here. I've never played any of the Onimusha games before, and you might be wondering, well, why are you jumping in for the second one when you haven't played the first one? Well, you don't have to play the first one, which is a really good thing for this game. You don't have to have gone through any of the other games in the series to understand what is happening in Onimusha 2, because the games are all set individually, much like those in the Final Fantasy franchise, where you haven't got to have played all of the Final Fantasy games to understand what's happening in 16. So with that in mind, you know that my thoughts on this game aren't coming from a place of rose-tinted glasses and nostalgia, and I'm kind of looking at it with a set of fresh eyes. Now, yes, I'm old, and I'm old enough to remember when the PS2 came out, and I'm old enough to remember when this game first came out. What I'd also like to point out is that this is what I would call a normal remaster. Bethesda kind of skewed the lines on what a remaster was when they remade Oblivion recently, and that kind of bordered on the remake territory, whereas no, this is what I would class as a remaster. The graphics have been improved. There's a few quality of life changes that have been put in there. For the most part, it's still the exact same game that people would have enjoyed back in 2002 when it first came out. Before I go into any aspect of the game, the one thing I really want to point out, and it is one of the quality of life choices that happened, is that there's an alternative to tank controls, which is brilliant. Now, I'm someone who never liked tank controls back in the day, and you don't have to use them with Onimusha 2. You can just get away with using the analog sticks as you normally would. The option for tank controls is there if you do want to have that proper nostalgic feel, but you haven't got to use it, which is a welcome change for someone who would never have done that in the first place. Another welcome quality of life change has been that apparently in the first game, there was no way of quickly changing weapons in fights without going through a menu system, whereas now you just hold down the left trigger and you can just change weapons with the D-pad, which is really quick, and in the heat of battle, it is actually quite easy to do. This game also features new difficulty modes, with one being a much easier one and one being a much harder one where you die in one hit. It's safe to say from the footage that you're seeing behind me that I did not take the latter option there. I also didn't take the first. Mama didn't raise no bitch. So like I said, this game is a remaster, which aside from the quality of life changes that I've just talked about, the graphics have also had a little bit of a look into as well. Now the textures have been upped and some of the clarity has definitely been improved. There's also a new widescreen mode involved, and the option for 4:3 is still there if you want to have that proper nostalgic feeling, but I stuck with the widescreen option. But there isn't anything crazy. There's no HDR, there's no ray tracing, nothing like that. It's just been bumped up, which is kind of what I think most people think of when we hear a game's getting a remaster. But aside from these changes that have been brought on by the remaster, how does it play? Well, actually really well. It's really fun to play, and this is coming from someone who's never dabbled in Onimusha before. I've kind of stayed away from that whole genre of game. In Onimusha 2 Samurai's Destiny, players take control of a character called Jubei, and that is the only name you are going to hear me pronounce, because the rest of them are way beyond my ability to say correctly without possibly offending someone, and I do not want to go down that road. The game opens up with Jubei, the player character, returning to their home village to find that it's been completely destroyed and everyone there has been killed. And it turns out it's at the hand of this demon commander. Now, there's a little bit of a story bit at the start which kind of goes over a little bit of the history. And speaking from personal opinion here, I think it's an overview of the Onimusha 1 story. Demon commander gets destroyed, he comes back to life in number 2, and this is the results of what we have to deal with. It's no Shakespearean novel, but it's a pretty solid plot for a game of this style. Players will then have to battle their way through hordes of different demons and enemies and boss fights to bring down that commander and hopefully restore the world to its former glory. Jubei's not alone in his travels, and he is joined by a host of other characters that all seem to have their own special abilities that help out when you play with them in combat. How that works exactly, I don't know. In the first 2 hours, it doesn't really get too deep with it. there were definitely some benefits to seeing some of those characters on the battlefield. Speaking of combat though, it's actually pretty good. You've got your basic attack, you've got a charged attack, but then you've also got the ability to collect souls. And don't go sitting there thinking that, oh, it's just a demon soul. It came out way before any of that to start off with. But also, collecting souls means that you can then, one, level up your weapons, but two, if you collect enough of the certain types of souls, you can then mash the L2 and R2 buttons and turn into a massive demon that does loads of damage yourself. It's great, really good fun. When I figured out how it worked, it was incredible. The boss fight that I did it in was really fun with that as an actual feature. And then also pressing triangle allows you to use magic attacks, which is even more fun. One thing that I think us as gamers have gotten very used to is a game spoon feeding us instructions and tutorials. Onimusha 2 does not do any of that. It does give you the instructions in the game in the sense that there's like an in-game manual that you can pick up, but it doesn't sit there and take you through a tutorial. You're not told what each button does and how to run, how to dodge, how to block, how to attack. It kind of expects you to have read the instruction manual, which is something we don't get with games anymore. When you do figure out the controls, it is really fun. And I actually found myself really enjoying the combat, as simple as it is compared to some things out there. It was really good. Different enemies respond differently to different types of weapons and different attacks. Sometimes you're going to need to use your sword for more quick damage, but sometimes you're going to get surrounded by groups of enemies and you're going to want to use your staff for it, or spear, whatever type of weapon this is. But then each weapon's got its own hidden ability as well, which you can find out, and it's quite deep and quite fun. On that as well, to find some of these hidden abilities, let's say, I had to do puzzles, and not just like push the block here, go jump on this thing over here. No, I'm talking I had to play Sudoku, kind of, and do these sort of moving puzzles as well. You could really see that the brains that were working on puzzles in things like Resident Evil games back in the day were working on a very similar thing here. It was really fun to do, and it was a nice breakup as well in that game flow. Another thing that broke up the gameplay a little bit was the relationship system that you have with your cast. Now, I don't know how deep that goes. I don't know how you can see how deep it's gone. However, I did know that there were gifts that you could give to people, and I was searching online to find out who received what the best and how you get the best items out of it, and it's pretty deep. I don't know what the benefits or perks of it would be just yet, but based on that first 2 hours of gameplay, it was pretty interesting to see that in a game like this, because it would be something that I'd normally keep in like the RPG side of stuff, but to see it blended into this like action, adventure, survival, horror, I don't even know what you want to class this game as, it was a welcome choice. There are some things I do need to point out as being a little bit not so good. One of the major things is the camera. All the camera angles are fixed in this game. There's no free camera, which can work really well, especially for games of this type. Like look at Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil 1, like these games don't have like free moving cameras. The originals, not the remakes obviously. In certain times, the camera really spun me out. There are moments where you were on screen for fractions of a second and the camera was a completely different angle and the way that you ran completely changed, and it was a bit confusing, I won't lie. You can definitely tell that the tank controls were the optimal way for playing back in the day with these like fixed cameras. But that said, once you get your head around it, it's not too bad. Another thing is some of the dialogue and the way that that is delivered, very wooden, very of the time, which is fine, but that hasn't aged too well. That said, it did provide me with some laughs, and I'm not gonna lie, kind of added a little bit of charm to it. However, what I would say, if it was one thing I could change, it would be to give the voice actors a little bit more, well, life. So now it boils down to, would I keep on playing it? And the answer is, it's a very easy yes. It's a game which I didn't think I would have liked getting into it. However, I was pleasantly surprised by how the game actually panned out. The combat feels very rewarding when you're hitting combos and special attacks on enemies and downing them, gaining their souls, leveling up, powering yourself up and using special abilities. It just feels really rewarding and really fun to do. And a game of this style, you wouldn't expect to have that sort of feeling with it, but it was so prevalent and it was so good to play. The game looks really good as well. Yes, it's a PS2 era game that's been brought up to speed with the modern era, but it still looks really good. It's also one which has aged quite well in terms of story, in terms of combat. All of it is pretty solid. Granted, there are a few rough edges to certain aspects of it, camera being one, the dialogue being another, but with all that in mind, I would definitely keep on playing this, and I would urge you to pick it up. With Capcom teasing that Onimusha's next game is going to be coming out next year, this may be something you want to get into to kind of build that hype up for it. It is one that I'm going to look to finish. It's not an incredibly long game as well, so hoping this will tide me over before the Switch 2 comes out. But yeah, I would definitely pick this up.